All right, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of our Friday Theology Readers Breakfast here at Greenbelt Baptist Church. And as we've been doing now for the last couple of weeks, though we took a week off last Friday, we're continuing through John Owen and his book, The Glory of Christ. We're reading the abridged version edited by R.J.K. Law. But nonetheless, just really accessible. And we left off last week looking at the glory of Christ in his humility, namely his the incarnation of the Son, and just being drawn in to behold the mystery and majesty of who Jesus Christ is as both God and man, two natures, mysteriously in one person. And what that does is it brings us into a closer grasp of Christ by faith, but encourages us in our walk so that we persevere to the end. And so I'm going to just pick right back up in the middle of chapter 4, and I'm reading here on page 42. Point 2. John Owen says, Christ did not convert his divine nature into the human. This was what some Arians of old taught, an ancient heresy, Arianism. This was what some Arians of old taught, and some still say today that, quote, the Word which was in the beginning, by which all things were made, was in the fullness of time turned into flesh. That is, the substance of the divine nature was turned into flesh, just as the water in Christ's miracle was turned into wine by an act of divine power, so these Arians say. By this act, it ceased to be water and was now wine only, not water mixed with wine. And so these men falsely suppose a substantial change of the one nature into the other. That is, the divine nature was somehow changed into the human nature in the same way that Roman Catholics would imagine the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ by transubstantiation. But this doctrine, says Owen, the way they understand this doctrine destroys both of Christ's natures and leaves him a person who can no longer be our mediator. For according to this teaching, that divine nature in which he was in the form of God ceased to be God once it was changed into the human. Indeed, it was completely destroyed because it was substantially changed into the nature of a man, as the water ceased to be water when it was turned into wine. And that human nature, which was made by the transformation of the divine nature into the human, has no relationship to us, seeing it was not made of a woman, but of the substance of the Word. What he's doing here is he's just trying to maintain the kind of classic Orthodox doctrine that Jesus Christ was both 100% God and 100% man, and that he was both those at the same time. He retained full divinity while taking on to himself, without changing his divinity, taking on to himself full humanity, and so we're safe in that, insofar as that we have a mediator who still can intercede for God and mediate for God and for men. He holds both natures, and therefore he is that mediating bridge between the chasm of fallen, fallible, finite men and a holy, infinite, holy God. Both of those are held together in the one person, Jesus Christ. See here if Instagram is working. I think it is.